Rosalie Brooks stared at her reflection in the tiny bathroom mirror of her apartment, her hands trembling as she applied lipstick for the fourth time. The coral shade kept smudging, betraying her nerves about attending her cousin Emma's wedding. At the prestigious Grand Harbor Hotel, her borrowed emerald dress hung awkwardly on her petite frame, the fabric bunching at the waist, despite her best efforts with safety pins. The dress belonged to her roommate, Jessica, was 3 sizes larger, and had completely different proportions. Rosalie had spent her last $50 on matching shoes from a discount store, hoping they would hold up for one evening of pretending she belonged in such an upscale venue, working as a marketing assistant at Serenity Springs Spa barely covered her rent and student loans. Tonight represented a rare venture into a world she usually only glimpsed through glossy magazines and celebrity social media accounts. Her cousin Emma had married into money, and this wedding was going to be a showcase of wealth that made Rosalie both excited and terrified. Fateful wrong turn, the Grand Harbor Hotel sparkled like a jewel against the evening sky, its marble entrance, flanked by pristine fountains and exotic flower arrangements. Rosalie checked her invitation 3 times, confirming she was looking for the Meridian Ballroom.
Ow!
The hotel was a maze of opulent hallways and ornate doors, each leading to different events and private functions. Following what she thought were the correct signs, Rosalie found herself standing before an elegant wooden door marked with gold lettering. She could hear classical music flowing from within, the sound of a live string quartet rather than the DJ Emma had mentioned. Assuming the wedding had taken a more sophisticated turn than expected, she smoothed her dress and pushed open the door. The sight that greeted her took her breath away. Instead of Emma's pink and gold color scheme, this ballroom was decorated in stunning black and white with dramatic red rose arrangements. The guests were dressed in formal evening wear, far more elaborate than what Emma had specified. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the polished marble floor where couples moved gracefully to a waltz. The magnetic encounter before Rosalie could process her mistake and retreat. A deep voice spoke softly behind her. "Are you lost, beautiful?" She turned to find herself looking into the most captivating gray eyes she had ever seen. The man standing before her was tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored black tuxedo that seemed custom-made for his athletic build. His dark hair was perfectly styled. There was something about his confident posture that suggested he was completely comfortable in this world of luxury. "I might be," Rosalie admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was looking for the Morrison-Chun wedding." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his serious expression into something warm and inviting. "That would be in the Aurora Ballroom, 3 doors down. But now that you're here, perhaps you'd honor me with a dance before you disappear?" Something in his tone, a mixture of playfulness and genuine interest, made Rosalie hesitate. She should leave immediately, find the correct wedding, and pretend this embarrassing mistake had never happened. But there was something magnetic about this stranger, something that made her pulse quicken, and her usual cautious nature abandoned her completely. "I don't even know your name," she said, though she was already taking a step closer to him. "Vincent," he said, extending his hand with an old-world charm that seemed natural rather than practiced. "Vincent Sterling? And you are?" "Rosalie?" She placed her hand in his, feeling an immediate jolt of electricity at the contact. His fingers were warm and strong, with calluses that suggested he wasn't just a pampered, rich man, but someone who worked with his hands. Dancing among strangers, Vincent led her onto the dance floor with the confidence of someone who had been attending formal events his entire life. The other couples moved aside respectfully, and Rosalie noticed several women watching. Vincent, with obvious interest and disappointment that he had chosen her as his partner. "I should probably mention," Rosalie said as he drew her into position. "For the waltz, I've never actually danced like this before." "Then we'll learn together," Vincent murmured, his hands settling on her waist with gentle firmness. "Just follow my lead and trust me." The music swelled around them, and somehow Rosalie found herself moving in perfect harmony with Vincent. He guided her through the steps with such skill that her inexperience didn't matter. She felt as though she was floating, carried along by the music and the warmth of his presence. "You're full of surprises," Vincent said, spinning her gracefully. before drawing her back against him. Most of the women I meet at these functions have been taking dance lessons since childhood, but none of them move like you do. How do I move? Rosalie asked, surprised by her own boldness. It's like you're dancing for the joy of it, not because it's expected. His gray eyes held hers as they moved together. There's something genuine about you that's incredibly refreshing. Dangerous. Chemistry as they danced, Rosalie found herself losing track of time and reality. Vincent's cologne was subtle but intoxicating, a mixture of cedar and something uniquely masculine that made her want to lean closer. His hand on her back was warm through the thin fabric of her dress, and every time he spoke, his breath tickled her ear in a way that sent shivers down her spine. "What do you do when you're not crashing exclusive events?" Vincent asked with a teasing smile. "I work in marketing for a spa," Rosalie answered honestly, then immediately wondered if she should have made up something more impressive. "Which spa?" "Serenity Springs. It's probably not anywhere you'd go. We cater more to local clients than celebrities and business moguls." Vincent's expression grew thoughtful. "Helena Winter's place?" The recognition in his voice made Rosalie's stomach drop. "You know Helena?" Before Vincent could answer, the music began to slow, signaling the end of the song. Other couples were separating and moving toward the elegant bar setup along one wall. But Vincent kept his hands on Rosalie's waist, seeming reluctant to let the moment end. "Rosalie," he said quietly, "I want you to know that meeting you tonight has been the highlight of what was supposed to be a very boring charity gala." Charity gala. Rosalie's eyes widened as she finally understood where she was. "This isn't a wedding at all. Sterling Foundation's annual fundraiser," Vincent confirmed. "But I'm glad you made the mistake, because otherwise I never would. Have met the most intriguing woman in the room." The shattering reality, just as Rosalie was beginning to believe this fairy tale moment might continue. A familiar voice cut through the romantic haze surrounding them. "Rosalie Brooks, what on earth are you doing here?" Rosalie's blood turned to ice as she recognized the voice of Helena Winters, her boss, approaching them with a look of complete shock and growing anger. Helena was stunning as always, her platinum blonde hair arranged in an elegant updo, her designer gown making Rosalie's borrowed dress look shabby by comparison. "Helena," Vincent said with surprise, his hands dropping from Rosalie's waist. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight." "Clearly," Helena said coldly, her sharp blue eyes moving between Vincent and Rosalie like a predator sizing up the situation. "Rosalie, I believe you're supposed to be at your cousin's wedding, not infiltrating charity galas you weren't invited to." The embarrassment hit Rosalie like a physical blow. Every eye in the vicinity was now focused on their little drama, and she could see the curiosity and judgment in the faces around them. She had been caught red-handed, exposed as an outsider who didn't belong in this world of wealth and privilege. "I got lost," Rosalie stammered, backing away from Vincent. "I took a wrong turn and ended up here by mistake. Convenient mistake." Helena said with icy precision that resulted in you dancing intimately with my former boyfriend. The revelation hit Rosalie like another punch to the gut. Vincent and Helena had a history, which explained the tension crackling between them, and the possessive way Helena was looking at Vincent despite calling him her former boyfriend. The escape unable to bear the humiliation any longer, Rosalie turned and fled. She pushed through the crowd of elegantly dressed guests, ignoring Vincent calling her name behind her. Her borrowed heels clicked frantically against the marble floor as she ran through the hotel's ornate corridors, desperate to escape the nightmare. Her romantic evening had become, "Rosalie, wait." Vincent's voice echoed behind her, but she didn't stop. She burst through the hotel's main entrance into the warm evening air, her chest heaving with embarrassment and the exertion of running in. Unfamiliar shoes. The valet looked at her with concern, but she waved him away and kept walking until she reached the street corner, where she could call Aridesha as she waited for her ride. Rosalie looked back at the glittering hotel where she had experienced the most magical 15 minutes of her life, followed by the most humiliating. Through the tall windows, she could see the gala continuing, the beautiful people returning to their conversations and champagne as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Despite the embarrassment and the obvious class differences, despite Helena's clear warning and Vincent's complicated past, Rosalie couldn't deny the connection she had felt during those few precious moments in his arms. She had never experienced anything like the electricity that passed between them. The way he had looked at her as if she was the only woman in the room, the lingering memory during the ride home to her modest apartment. Rosalie replayed every moment of their dance, the way Vincent had guided her so expertly, the warmth in his gray eyes, the gentle strength of his hands, the way her body had responded to his proximity as if they had been made to dance together. She knew she would probably never see him again. Men like Vincent Sterling didn't pursue marketing assistants from modest backgrounds, especially when their sophisticated ex-girlfriends were clearly still in the picture. Tonight had been a beautiful mistake, a glimpse into a world where she could never truly belong. But as Rosalie finally reached her apartment and kicked off the painful borrowed shoes, she couldn't shake the feeling that Vincent had been as affected by their encounter as she was. There had been something genuine in his voice when he said meeting her had been the highlight of his evening, something real in the way he had looked at her. Little did she know that back at the gala, Vincent was having the exact same thoughts, staring at the door through which she had disappeared and wondering how he was going to find the mysterious woman who had turned his perfectly ordered world upside down with one dance. 3 days had passed since the charity gala disaster. Rosalie still felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment every time she thought about it. She had barely slept, replaying the humiliating moment when Helena had exposed her as an uninvited guest who didn't belong among the wealthy elite. Even worse was the memory of Vincent's surprised expression when he learned she worked for his ex-girlfriend. Serenity Springs Spa felt different now that Rosalie knew Helena had a romantic history with the man who had made her heart race with just one dance. The luxury wellness center, nestled in an upscale neighborhood, suddenly seemed less like her workplace and more like a reminder of the vast social gap between her world and Vincent's. Helena had been unusually quiet since the gala, speaking to Rosalie only when absolutely necessary and with a coolness that hadn't existed before. The other staff members noticed the tension but were too professional to comment directly, though Rosalie caught their curious glances when Helena's voice turned particularly icy during their interactions. A morning full of surprises, Tuesday morning, started like any other, with Rosalie arriving early to prepare the appointment schedules and ensure all treatment rooms were properly set up. She was arranging fresh orchids in the reception area when Helena emerged from her office, looking unusually flustered despite her perfectly applied makeup and designer outfit. "Rosalie," Helena said, her voice carrying that strained politeness she had adopted since the gala incident. "I need you to be especially attentive today. We have a very important client coming in at 10 o'clock. Of course, Mrs. Winters. Anyone I should know about specifically?" Helena paused, fidgeting with her diamond bracelet in a way that suggested she was nervous about something. "Vincent Sterling will be here for our signature wellness package. He's considering a partnership opportunity with several high-end spas, and I want everything to be absolutely perfect." The name hit Rosalie like a lightning bolt. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the orchid arrangement, nearly knocking over the crystal vase in the process. Vincent was coming here to her workplace, where she would have to face him after her mortifying exit from the gala. "Are you all right?" Helena's sharp eyes missed nothing. "You look pale." "I'm fine," Rosalie managed, though her voice sounded strained, even to her own ears. "Just want to make sure we're prepared for such an important client." Helena studied her for a long moment, and Rosalie had the uncomfortable feeling that her boss was putting pieces together that she didn't want assembled. The unexpected reunion at exactly 10 o'clock. The spa's glass doors opened to admit Vincent Sterling, looking every bit as commanding and attractive as he had at the gala. Today he wore a tailored charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, and his gray eyes swept the reception area with the confident gaze of someone accustomed to evaluating business opportunities. But when his eyes landed on Rosalie behind the reception desk, his expression shifted from businesslike assessment to something much more personal and intense. A slow smile spread across his face, the same smile that had made her heart flutter 3 nights ago. "Good morning," he said, approaching the desk with deliberate steps. "I believe I have an appointment." Rosalie's mouth went dry. "Mr. Sterling." Yes, of course. Welcome to Serenity Springs. Thank you, Rosalie. The way he said her name, with that slight emphasis and warmth, made it clear he remembered every detail of their encounter. I have to say, I didn't expect to find you here. Before Rosalie could respond, Helena appeared as if summoned by some invisible signal, gliding across the reception area with practiced elegance. She was wearing a form-fitting white dress that highlighted her tall, model-like figure, and her smile was radiant as she approached Vincent. "Vincent, darling," she said, reaching up to kiss his cheek in a gesture that seemed casual, but struck Rosalie as deliberately territorial. "So wonderful to see you. I hope you're ready for the most relaxing experience of your life." "I'm looking forward to it," Vincent replied, though his eyes kept drifting back to Rosalie. "I didn't realize you knew my assistant." The word assistant rather than employee was a small kindness that didn't go unnoticed by either woman. Lena's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Oh yes, Rosalie has been with us for over a year now. She's very dedicated to her work." The emphasis on work was subtle but clear. "Shall we begin with your consultation?" Dangerous undercurrents as Helena led Vincent toward the consultation room. He turned back to catch Rosalie's eye. "I hope we'll have a chance to talk later," he said quietly, the words carrying far more weight than their surface meaning suggested. The next 2 hours were torture for Rosalie. She tried to focus on her administrative tasks, but her mind kept wandering to Vincent somewhere in the spa's treatment rooms. The signature wellness package included a massage, facial, and relaxation therapy, which meant he would be here for most of the morning. Around noon, Lena emerged from the treatment area looking pleased with herself, but with a calculating gleam in her eyes that Rosalie recognized as dangerous. She had seen that expression before when Helena was maneuvering to get something she wanted, whether it was a difficult client or a business advantage. "Rosalie, dear," Helena said with false sweetness, "would you mind bringing some of our premium herbal tea to the relaxation lounge? Mr. Sterling is finishing his session there." It was clearly a test, and they both knew it. Helena was giving Rosalie an opportunity to interact with Vincent, but also watching to see how she would handle the situation. Rosalie had no choice but to accept gracefully. A moment alone, the relaxation lounge was a serene space designed to help clients transition back to the outside world after their treatments. Soft music played in the background, and the lighting was dim and soothing. Vincent was sitting in one of the comfortable armchairs, looking more relaxed than Rosalie had ever seen him, though his eyes sharpened with interest when she entered carrying a tray of tea. "Service with a smile," he said, his voice warm with genuine pleasure at seeing her. "Only the best for our valued clients," Rosalie replied, trying to maintain professional distance, even as her heart raced at being alone with him. As she set down the tea service on the small table beside his chair, Vincent caught her wrist gently. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm, just as it had during their dance. "Rosalie, about the other night," he began, his thumb brushing across her pulse point in a way that made her breath catch. "I want you to know that I've been thinking about you constantly since you disappeared." "You shouldn't say things like that," Rosalie whispered, acutely aware that Helena could appear at any moment. "Why not? It's the truth." Vincent's gray eyes held hers with an intensity that made the rest of the world fade away. "That dance we shared was the most real moment I've experienced in months, maybe years. Vincent, I work for Helena. This is complicated in ways you don't understand." "Then help me understand." He released her wrist but didn't break eye contact. "Have dinner with me tonight, somewhere we can talk without interruption." The invitation hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Rosalie knew she should refuse, knew that getting involved with Vincent would only lead to heartbreak and professional complications. But the memory of how right it had felt to be in his arms was stronger than her rational mind. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I think it's the best idea I've had in a very long time." Vincent stood up, moving closer to her until she could smell his cologne and feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Please, Rosalie, give us a chance to see where this connection leads." Helena's intervention before Rosalie could respond. The sound of heels clicking on marble announced Helena's approach. Vincent stepped back smoothly, but not before Helena caught the tail end of their intimate conversation as she entered the lounge. "Hope everything is to your satisfaction, Vincent," Helena said, her voice carefully controlled, but with an edge that suggested she had heard enough to be concerned. "Absolutely perfect," Vincent replied, though his eyes remained on Rosalie for a beat longer than was professionally appropriate. "Your staff is exceptionally attentive." "Yes, Rosalie is quite dedicated, perhaps too dedicated sometimes." The warning in Helena's voice was subtle, but unmistakable. "I'm sure she has other duties to attend to now." Dismissed, Rosalie had no choice but to leave, but not before Vincent said quietly, "Think about what we discussed." The confrontation. 20 minutes later, Helena appeared in the break room, where Rosalie was trying to compose herself over a cup of coffee. The older woman closed the door behind her, and Rosalie knew she was about to face the storm she had been dreading. "How long have you known Vincent?" Helena asked without preamble, her professional mask finally slipping to reveal the jealousy and anger beneath. "I met him at the gala, just like you saw," Rosalie answered truthfully. "And that was the first time you'd ever seen him?" "Yes." Helena studied her for a long moment, as if trying to detect lies. "Vincent and I had a very serious relationship, Rosalie. We were together for almost 2 years. Our families have been friends for decades, and everyone expected us to marry." "I understand," Rosalie said quietly, though understanding didn't make the situation any less painful. "Do you?" Helena moved closer, her blue eyes cold as winter. "Because from what I observed just now, it seems like you're entertaining romantic notions about a man who is completely out of your league." The words stung because they echoed Rosalie's own fears. "I'm not entertaining anything. I'm just doing my job." "Good." Helena's smile was sharp as a blade. "Because Vincent is going through a phase right now. He's rebelling against expectations, looking for something different and exciting. But phases end, Rosalie. And when his ends, he'll come back to what makes sense. To someone from his world who understands the complexities of his life. Is that what you're counting on?" The question slipped out before Rosalie could stop it, and Helena's eyes flashed with anger. "I'm counting on you remembering your place," Helena said coldly. "Vincent Sterling is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He moves in circles where business deals are made over dinner and where the wrong word at a charity gala can destroy careers. You're a sweet girl, Rosalie, but you're also naive if you think he's seriously interested in anything more than a temporary distraction." Seeds of doubt the rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of routine tasks, but Helena's words echoed in Rosalie's mind. Was she really just a temporary distraction for Vincent? A novelty that would lose its appeal once the initial excitement wore off? By closing time, Rosalie had almost convinced herself that Helena was right. She was preparing to lock up the reception area when she noticed a small envelope that had been slipped under the appointment book. Her name was written on it in handwriting she was beginning to recognize. Inside was a simple note: "Dinner tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Il Giardino on 5th Street. Please don't let fear make this decision for you, Vincent." Rosalie stared at the note, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. Il Giardino was one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, the kind of place she had only read about in magazines. The invitation represented everything she wanted and everything she feared about getting involved with Vincent. The decision as she drove home to her small apartment, Rosalie weighed her options. She could ignore the invitation, protect her job, and avoid the inevitable heartbreak that would come from falling for a man from a different world. It would be the safe choice, the practical choice. Or she could take a leap of faith and discover whether the connection she felt with Vincent was real enough to bridge the gap between their different lives. It would be risky, potentially devastating, but it might also be the chance at happiness she had never dared to hope for. That night, as Rosalie lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she thought about the way Vincent had looked at her during their dance, the genuine warmth in his voice when he said her name, and the electricity she felt every time he touched her. Despite Helena's warnings and her own fears, she couldn't deny that what she felt for Vincent was stronger than anything she had ever experienced. By morning, she had made her decision. She would go to dinner with Vincent Sterling. Consequences. Be damned, because sometimes she realized the biggest risk was not taking any risk at all. Rosalie stood before her modest closet, panic rising in her chest as she realized she had absolutely nothing appropriate to wear to Il Giardino. The exclusive restaurant was known for its celebrity clientele and astronomical prices, and her wardrobe consisted mainly of professional attire for the spa and casual clothes for weekends at home. After an hour of trying on every possible combination, she settled on a simple black dress she had bought for job interviews 2 years ago. It was plain but well-fitted, and with her grandmother's pearl earrings and the one pair of heels that didn't hurt her feet, she hoped she could pass for someone who belonged in Vincent's world, at least for one evening. The taxi ride to Il Giardino felt like traveling to another planet. As they pulled up to the restaurant, Rosalie saw elegantly dressed couples stepping out of luxury cars while valets rushed to attend to them. The building itself was a converted mansion with ivy-covered walls and warm golden light spilling from tall windows. Vincent was waiting for her at the entrance, and the sight of him in a perfectly tailored navy suit made her breath catch. But what struck her most was the genuine smile that lit up his face when he saw her approaching. He looked at her as if she were the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, making her feel like she truly belonged beside him. "You look stunning," he said, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and incredibly romantic. "I was afraid you might change your mind." "I almost did," Rosalie admitted, surprised by her own honesty. "What made you decide to come?" She looked into his gray eyes, seeing warmth and genuine interest rather than the casual amusement she had feared. "I wanted to find out if what I felt the other night was real." Dinner in Paradise Il Giardino was everything Rosalie had imagined and more. Their table was in a private alcove, surrounded by trailing jasmine and soft candlelight. Vincent had clearly arranged for them to have privacy. The staff treated them with the kind of discreet attention that suggested this was not his first time bringing a date to this particular restaurant. As they talked over the most incredible meal Rosalie had ever tasted, she found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't expected. Vincent was charming and attentive, but more importantly, he seemed genuinely interested in learning about her life, her dreams, and her thoughts on everything from books to travel to her favorite childhood memories. "Tell me about growing up," Vincent said as they shared a decadent chocolate dessert. "Very different from yours, I imagine," Rosalie said with a self-conscious laugh. "My mom worked 2 jobs to support us after my dad left when I was 12. She cleaned offices at night and worked at a grocery store during the day. I learned early that if I wanted something, I had to work for it myself." Instead of the awkward silence she expected, Vincent's expression grew thoughtful and respectful. "That must have made you incredibly strong." "I admire that about you." "What about you?" she asked. "Was it lonely growing up with all that wealth and privilege?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "Lonelier than you might think. My parents divorced when I was 15, and after that, I was mostly raised by nannies and boarding school teachers. Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy the kind of warmth and security you clearly had with your mother." Revelations and connections. As the evening progressed, Rosalie discovered that beneath Vincent's polished exterior was a man who felt just as out of place in his world as she did. He talked about the pressure to live up to family expectations, the difficulty of knowing whether people liked him for himself or his money, and his dream of using his resources to create something meaningful rather than just accumulating more wealth. "That's why I was so drawn to you at the gala," he said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You didn't know who I was or what I was worth. You just saw me, and you responded to me as a person. You have any idea how rare that is in my world?" "But I lied to you," Rosalie protested. "I pretended to belong at that party when I was just lost. You were more honest in that moment than most people are after knowing me for years." Vincent's thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "You didn't put on an act or try to impress me. You just danced with me because you wanted to." The unexpected resolution, just as Rosalie was beginning to wonder if she had been too hasty in her judgment, there was a knock at her apartment door. She opened it to find Vincent standing in the hallway, looking disheveled and exhausted, as if He had been up all night. "Before you close the door," he said quickly, "I need to tell you something that Helena doesn't know." Despite every instinct telling her to protect herself, Rosalie found herself stepping back to let him in. "I turned down the spa acquisition," Vincent said without preamble. "This morning I called my business partners and told them I was no longer interested in purchasing or partnering with Serenity Springs." Rosalie stared at him in shock. "Why would you do that?" "Because I realized that as long as there was any business connection between us, you would never believe that my feelings for you are real." Vincent moved closer, his gray eyes intense with emotion. "I'm walking away from a potentially very profitable deal because losing you would be a greater loss than any amount of money." "Vincent, I'm not finished," he interrupted gently. "I also need to tell you that Helena knew about our dinner because I told her. I thought I was being transparent about my intentions, but I realize now that I was naive about her motives. She used that information to hurt both of us." The revelation shifted everything Rosalie thought she knew about the previous evening. "She planned that confrontation?" "I believe so. I fell right into her trap by not being completely honest with you from the beginning about the business connection." Vincent reached out tentatively to touch her face. "Rosalie, I know we come from different worlds, and I know there will be challenges, but what I feel for you is the most real thing in my life. Please don't let fear of those challenges keep us from finding out what we could be together." Looking into his eyes, Rosalie saw the same sincerity that had drawn her to him during their first dance. This time, there were no elegant parties or business complications clouding the moment. It was just two people who had found something special and were brave enough to fight for it. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "So am I," Vincent said, leaning down to rest his forehead against hers. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." When he kissed her, it was with all the passion and tenderness that had been building between them since that first waltz. And as Rosalie kissed him back, she realized that sometimes the greatest risk was not taking the chance on love when it found you, regardless of the obstacles that stood in the way. Outside her small apartment window, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was the beginning of a new chapter for both of them, one where love would have to be stronger than social expectations, business complications, and the doubts of those who couldn't understand that sometimes the heart chooses its own path.